Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, best-selling author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to my channel, it's a pleasure to have you on. Please consider hitting that subscribe button as well as bell notification icon to stay up to date to podcasts coming your way. You could also follow us in the mindbodyspirit.fm for the audio syndicated podcast. Today's guest in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is Michelle Clare. Michelle is a three-time near-death experiencer, evidential medium, angel communicator, and more. And so Michelle's going to share her profound near-death experiences, her journey to mediumship, and lessons from the spirit realm. So without further ado, we bring on wonderful Michelle Clare on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Michelle Clare, thank you so much for being here as an honored guest in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder.
No, thank you so much for having me, Jacob. I am excited to be here and have this conversation and connection with you today.
We are so excited to have you. I know we connected at the Helping Parents Heal, conference, this past August in Phoenix, Arizona. But before that, I've really seen your work blossom throughout the years and I've heard such wonderful things. So I am really looking forward to this conversation because I mean, geez, I think cats have nine lives, but I think Michelle Clare must have that too. You have a lot of experiences in survival. But for those who haven't really heard of you, which I think you have to be under a rock these days because you do so much and you help out so many people with all of your work. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself in your work and what kind of drives you to be this, healer extraordinaire that we're seeing today?
No, thank you so much. Yeah. So for me, I'm going to give you a little more background. So I was raised Catholic. I grew up in that faith and that religion. And there were parts of it that connected to me and other parts that I didn't understand or didn't feel right. So even as a child, I always had a connection to source, higher power, and excuse me, to source and the higher power. Now, with that being said, we all have that. I would just say I was maybe more aware of it because there's not a human on this planet that is disconnected from God, source, the divine. So, with that being said, I was very much aware of it. And I remember when my grandfather passed away, I was 12 years old. At this point in time, I knew nothing about mediumship. I kn I just knew, there was more than what I was learning in church. So when my grandfather passed away, he and I started communicating, and I would share with my mom what my grandfather was saying. My mom would say to me, "Well, I know that's what you think grandpa would say if he was still here." So I realized not everybody was having these conversations with grandpa. Later on, my grandmother passed, same situation happened. So I did have mediumship capabilities at a young age. I wouldn't have used that term for them because I didn't know it. What happened following that was I ended up having three near death experiences. So, with each near death experience, I was opened up even more to spirit world, to my mediumship. And we can dive into those if you would like to hear. I can give you the Cliff Notes version of those. In April of 2000, at that point in my life, I was married. I did not have any kids. We were in a hospital visiting my sister-in-law who had just had a baby, and I went out to talk to her RN, who was my friend from high school. At that point in time, I had a massive seizure. When I had this seizure, I remember opening my eyes. I was in an all white room and the walls appeared to be alive or breathing, and they were radiating this light and love and this blissful feeling. There was no time. I remember noticing that my grandma, who had passed away a couple years before, was holding me in her lap with my head on her lap. And as I looked at her, she was the youngest, brightest version of her that I could remember. And then all of a sudden, I was looking up next to her, and there was this 12-foot angel standing there. I had always believed in angels. I did not realize how massive they actually are. And if we think about that from an energy perspective, of course, they're so strong and beautiful and loving and graceful. It's going to take a big presence to hold that, right? As I looked up at this angel, I remember thinking in my head, "What is your name?" And she answered me in my head. She said, "My name's Madeline. I'm one of your guardian angels." I was a little bit surprised because I knew nothing about telepathic communication either. And the next thing I know, I hear someone yelling, "Code, code, code." And I was dropped back into my body. So I had quit breathing during the seizure. And since I was already in the hospital, they were calling the code team.
Wow. Hmm.
And that it was really it took me a couple weeks, and I know you hear this with a lot of NDE'ers. It took me a couple weeks to even share that with anyone. I had no box, no container to put that in. I had never heard of a near-death experience. I just knew I had had this vivid experience that was more vivid than my daily life.
Wow. Wow. And what year was this again? This was in
This was in April 2000.
April of 2000. You had your NDE. Yeah, you make a great point because, generally takes people a while for them to really understand. I mean, for instance, for infants or children like myself at an NDE, it's like 20 to 30 years that they say to fully make sense of it. Um, for you that, there was a lot that unfolded, during your first NDE. How did you make sense of it? Did you read books? Did you talk to people? And also, I would assume that there was some degree of trauma that you must have had from having this experience. So for you, like, what was that pathway of understanding and healing, during this first NDE?
Right. With my, NDEs, I always end up coming out of them with physical trauma that I have to heal from. So with that one, they actually admitted me into the hospital. They could not find out why I had a seizure, and I've never had one again. It is the only seizure I had had in my life. So I got a concussion when I hit the floor and things like that, but the physical trauma wasn't too bad. The black eye, the concussion, all of that. With what I was trying to understand, I had no one I could talk to about
Mm.
in my life. I didn't even know people wrote books on this. I really was just living in a very small world about, okay, this is what we do. We go to church, we go to work, we're married. And so for me, what it was I realized heaven knew I was coming. So there were lessons I learned with no one to talk to about this. Heaven knew I was coming. My grandma who passed and my guardian angel were sitting right there waiting for me. I didn't even know I was going, but they did, right? So I knew that was real. I understood that timelessness in a way that's very hard to describe if you haven't been able to have that experience through a meditation or an out of body experience or something hopefully less drastic than an NDE. And I really understood at that moment that we have angels that are around all of us. There is not one human, one animal, one life form on this planet that does not have at least one angel there to guard it and guide it during its process of this journey of earth life.
Wow. So true. And, I know we both connect to angels. We both have statues on them. We both experienced angels in our NDEs. But for you, I mean, I know with near death experience, there's a lot of after effects,
Right.
that can occur. I know you mentioned pre NDE, even like you were connected to spirit. You had this experience with, I believe, your grandmother. I believe you said at a young age in connection.
Yes.
Did you connect to the angels stronger after your NDEs? And for viewers, listening and watching, what have you really come to understand, if so, about what angels are about? Why are they there? What is it for?
Yes. Yeah, so with this first NDE, absolutely. It was an awakening more, what I would say, to the angelic realm. I don't think I was ever meant to be there. I never got a choice. It was whoop, back in the body, right? And that's how it happens for a lot of people. And so with this, what I understood was more, I would say it strengthened my communication and knowing with angels. So I am walking around with this communication channel with angels that is more open after that. I still do nothing with this. So I just go back into my life. It was not emotionally or mentally traumatic for me. It was peaceful. I was happy to know that I had support, that heaven was helping me, that grandma knew I was coming and was still, vibrant and alive. And so all of that was really, really comforting for me. And besides the physical trauma, I really didn't have emotional trauma around it. Although I would say there were maybe one or two people I shared this with, because I knew very few people that could even process that story, let alone attempt to understand it. So I just went on with my life. My second NDE then comes in and happens in May of 2006. So at this point in my life, I have three little kids. I have a 5 year old, a 2.5 year old, and a 6 week old infant. After I had had him, I had had a lot of complications. So I had been in the hospital the majority of the 6 weeks after I had him. And the doctors finally said, we need to do a D&C. And that's a procedure where they clear out the uterus, they clean it out. And they said, this is a 45-minute outpatient procedure. This will fix you. You're going to be able to go home. I said, okay, even though the night before I had this pit in my stomach and felt like I should not do this. What I remember is I had had anesthesia before, and whenever I had had it, it was just a blank. There was no dream, there was no memory, there was nothing there. I counted backwards for the anesthesiologist, which I can remember. The next thing I know, I look over and my beautiful 102-pound white German Shepherd named Tahoe, who had passed away a couple years prior, was walking into the operating room, laid her head on my gurney, and we were gone. And we were on this phenomenal beach, phenomenal, with colors that we don't have here on earth, with sounds, almost I wanna even say emotions. Every drop of water in the ocean, every molecule of every leaf, every piece of sand on the beach, radiating this light and love from the inside out. And as I looked at my dog, we were running on the beach. She looked like she was about 2 years old, healthy, vibrant coat. Once again, we're telepathically communicating. She's happy that I'm there. And at some point, I start to notice I'm not getting hot. I'm not getting tired. I'm not getting thirsty. I feel like I'm running on clouds. What's going on here? And as I come into this awareness of like, "Well, this is not your usual jog," which by the way, human Michelle does not go for runs. I tell my friends, if you see me running, call 911. That's an emergency. So I even think it's funny that my NDE is me running and running on the beach because that is not what human Michelle does, right? Um, as I'm on the beach,
Human Jacob's the total opposite. I'm a avid runner, yeah.
okay. Well, I won't see you out there, but I'm proud of you. So what happened then is that as I became aware of this again timeless dimension, this blissful feeling, I could feel my son, who at that time was 6 weeks old, and at my house with my mom calling to me. And so I went to him, and I could tell that he was really afraid that I was getting ready to leave him. I mean, he was 6 weeks old, and I said to him, Josh, I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to find a way to stay. And I did not know what to do. So I started praying and I started saying, it's not my time. I need help. My kids still need me. I still need to be here. And at that moment, I am transported back into the operating room. I see Jesus come in, and Jesus comes in as my best friend, not confess to me or pray to me, or it was nothing like that. It was like, I'm here as your best friend to help you. I saw the operating room light up in this beautiful white light. And the next thing I knew, I was waking up in the post op. And my 45-minute procedure had turned into a 3.5 hour emergency surgery because they had ruptured my uterus in multiple places, missed my artery by a millimeter, literally. It was so close they couldn't even suture it. They had to pack it. And when they ruptured the uterus, the infection got pushed into the body. So I was again in bad shape and in the hospital for another week on IV antibiotics with fevers and all sorts of problems. As I come back into my life at this point in time, I'm literally overwhelmed. It took me 4 months to get back to 80% of the level of functioning that I had been at before physically. And I had this vivid experience. I had no one to share it with. I didn't know what to do. So, truly, what I did was I just kind of put it on the shelf and left it there and kept going because I was very much in physical survival mode. And also, I had these babies to raise. Life was calling. I was a stay at home mom. So, there was a lot of responsibility on me.
Yeah, yeah, wow. So 2 in the span of 6 years, and, um,
Hmm.
profound. For yourself, and I'm just wondering, having 3 near-death experiences, and, as medicine is increasing, probably see more of documented rates or that incubation period between life and death extend. But, I'm just curious for you, like, why do you feel you've had so many of these occurrences on a soul level? Do you feel that was random? Was it something that was, charted before you got here? Why do you feel that you, or maybe subjectively certain souls have near death experiences? What's that
Right.
about?
So, in hindsight, what I know now is each one was a wake up call for me where I could have stepped into more of who I was as far as embodying more of my soul in my human form, working more with my mediumship, helping people, having a greater understanding because of the points in time that they happened in my life, although they were these beautiful wake up calls, they were also kind of ignored on my part because of this. I will say this, I do believe that that second one with my son, it was an exit point. The first one, maybe not. The first one, a wake up call. The fact that it happened in the hospital, the code team was right there, on and on. The second one, truly, I felt like my soul ushered in a miracle to be able to stay to raise my kids. And I feel like, yes, there are two things happening here. One, on a soul level, I'm wanting to wake up and connect to spirit world more and help people in those ways. And the other side of it is that I was literally physically in some situations that were quite deadly, not by anything that I was doing.
Yeah. And it seems like a theme for you in terms of why you stayed was there was specific reasons, like, your children were a big part of your reason. Like, you weren't told, "Hey, you have a choice." You're told, "Hey, no, my kids," and it was something that your soul wanted. I mean, this is something that, may be controversial, maybe, upsetting to us. Everybody's trying to, like, clarify,
Mhm,
because there are, as we know, working with organizations such as Helping Parents Heal and other organizations, parents that do cross over, and someone
mhm.
be like, "Hey, did my parent not love me? They abandoned me, they left me." I mean, so what do you say with, like, people who did come back from their NDEs versus those that did cross over, as it relates to the purpose of the soul, as to why certain souls cross and why some come back?
Right. And I hear that question when I'm working with clients too. Did they have a choice? Here's what I would say. I do not believe that souls go when they are still given reasons to be here, right? So I really do believe at that final exit point, our time here is complete. I'm not saying that that makes sense to me on a human level. I don't, there's a lot of people that check out early. But on a soul level, it is always between that soul and source. So, one of the things that I understood from the second NDE, where there are at least 3 levels to my awareness that a soul is allowed to cross on. Number 1, can the body sustain life and home the soul, right? So we have a massive car accident. It might not even be an option to stay. The body has been totaled, right? So if that happens, you're going home. The second one is really about your soul. So if I had chosen to leave, would my sister have raised my kids? Would my best friend have raised my kids? Would my husband at the time have found a good stepmom, right? There were other things that needed to happen if my soul was going to go. And then the third one is it really comes down to our soul and God. And some of us would say that could be considered our pre life plan when we're coming in. And so there is for every soul that is here on the planet a final exit point. This is part of our earthly life. Our humanness might never understand the why and the when, but on a soul level, it is perfectly timed, not just for our soul and the growth that we need as a soul, but for what we are contributing to the human collective and consciousness.
Mhm. Yeah. So maybe for a viewer listening to this who has had a loved one cross over, it's not, you would say, they're abandoning you. They just have, it's a part of their soul's trajectory, and that you'll meet again. Um, yeah, I mean, do you also, with that, do you also feel that some souls are better served over there sometimes than over here? Whereas, or in a sense, like we feel on our end, their impact is more over there, but in the spirit realm, they're able to really see that my impact is maybe stronger sometimes over there or over here, depending on circumstances.
Absolutely. Look at how many amazing foundations and scholarships and things have come out of somebody who loves somebody who's now on the other side, right? And we create a foundation for them, or we say, this is not going to happen to one more person. I'm going to have a new law brought into effect, right? So here's the thing, if your loved one came in because this was a law or a foundation or something that needed to happen, and you had a soul agreement that when they left, you were going to go through and fulfill this, whether we remember it or not, because many, many times we don't know our soul plan or remember it when we get to earth. This is important because what has the soul and you chosen to do? Help humanity. There are times where there are souls that choose to leave. And like I will talk about myself. So a year and a half ago, my life partner transitioned by suicide. And
Okay.
what I know with this from spirit is suicide is not written in the soul plan as the exit point. There are souls that will come in that have a higher likelihood of leaving that way, but it's not written in the exit plan as going to happen for sure. This is how you're leaving. What will happen between the point where the person becomes depressed or is having mental illness or whatever, there are intervention points if the soul's open to it. So maybe it's the human smiling at you, it's the phone call, it's there will be spirit world intervening as much as they can to keep you here to fulfill your mission. There will come sometimes a point where the soul closes down and there's nothing that can intervene at that point in time. And when that happens, and if that happens, the soul is always welcomed home with light and love.
Yeah. Well, Michelle, I had no idea that, you experienced, this, and some people call it a tragedy and others an experience, maybe of the soul. For viewers, listening, for you on a personal level, how did you find, a pathway forward? Were you able to utilize a lot of, support systems around you? I mean, maybe right now it's still, difficult to talk about, and I really applaud you for having the strength to talk about this because, I think when it comes to suicide, even on YouTube, it's censored, like, and when it comes to support for people who've, had, family or friends cross over,
Mhm.
in general, the support goes down by around 70% where people just don't know what to do.
Right.
And so for yourself or maybe for viewers, watching, because these days we all have someone that we know, who might have crossed over, or someone, a friend of a friend. Um, how did you find a pathway to live for another day after that? I couldn't imagine, you know,
Yeah.
just going
It's
forward,
it is huge. Let me talk about my 3rd NDE really
Yeah,
quickly, and then we're gonna dive into the suicide, because
sure.
in my 3rd near-death experience, I had 14-foot ceilings at this house, and I was climbing up a ladder to put up a candle that would turn on and glow automatically every night. I had replaced the batteries in it, and I end up getting up towards the top. I feel it start to shift, and I think, "This is gonna hurt." At this point in my life, my kids are 5, 8, and 10. My younger 2 kids were home with me, and I was in the kitchen. As I realized that this was going to hurt, I felt myself getting ripped out of my body. I was turned around facing my body and the ladder suspended in the air. And I was standing with 3 people that I did not know, but I felt like I had known them my whole life. They felt like family. I did not know the term life guides at this point in time. I had an Asian man, an Egyptian woman, and a Hawaiian man standing there. And they looked at me and they said to me, "What would you like to do? Would you like to stay or would you like to go?" At that moment in time, another angel came in. This angel was dressed in red and gold. And as I saw this angel, I knew this angel was going to take me home or shift something so that I could stay. And when I say home, I mean the heavenly realm.
Yeah.
So I am looking at my kids in the kitchen, and I remember thinking, how do I have forever to make this decision when my body's going to hit the floor in a couple seconds?
Mm,
As I saw my younger children in the kitchen, I realized once again that I needed to stay. As I made this decision, I was given information from my guides, and the information was this: okay, but there's going to be a lot of trauma ahead for you. Your 25-year marriage is most likely going to end in divorce. There's going to be more pain. You're not going back to rainbows and unicorns and butterflies. I remember very clearly them telling me there would be harder things ahead.
mm,
They also part of the deal that I made at that point in time to come back was I had to commit to working, um, to help people in the way that I can spiritually, as a medium, connecting with angels, life guides, all of these things
mm,
that I had put on the back burner. So I end up falling. I hit the back of my head on the corner of my
mm,
granite island. I had a 5.5-inch skull fracture, a brain bleed. I lost my equilibrium, my taste, my smell, part of my hearing, massive physical trauma. And what happens then, though, is I start coming back. I'm obviously in the hospital and ICU. All sorts of things are going on here at that time. But I start to remember, and this is common for NDE'ers, right? So I didn't come back with every single memory of everything they told me. Yes, it had been downloaded, I had been told, but the memories kind of roll in. And even today, I'll get a memory or an awareness of something that they said. For people who like numbers, that happened on 11/1/11, so November 1st,
yeah.
2011, right? So I had the opportunity then to start working as a medium. I had the opportunity to help connect loved ones to their loved ones who had transitioned by suicide. I had had the gift of being able to work with this for a long time, to already know within my heart that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you get home, you're welcome home. Right. And very often I think of this as think about high school graduation. You could drop out of high school and still go to the graduation and watch your friends graduate. It doesn't mean you get the diploma, but you still get to go to the graduation. You still get to go to the parties. You still get to celebrate with people. This is a little bit like our earthly life. Did we pass the course? Did we master all the lessons we came to master? Most likely not. But do we still get welcomed home and invited to the party and surrounded with unconditional love? 100%. So, heading into this suicide, which is why I wanted to give that little background headed into it, I had had the gift of being able to understand it somewhat through the human form, through the clients and friends I had known that had gone through this, and being able to see it from the mediumship spiritual perspective. When this happened in my life, I was not expecting it. His ex wife, his children, everyone will tell you he was the happiest anyone had seen him. So it was very much a shock. None of us were expecting this. With him, yes, I was absolutely devastated. This is the man I was planning on spending my life with. This is the man that I felt loved by in a way I had never felt loved before. It was absolutely devastating, to put it lightly. So how do I start to heal from that? Honestly, the first few months, my friends carried me. I was very blessed, just like you, that in our world that we live in, the people, our peers, our friends, a lot of them that we're connected to are mediums, are channels, are healers. They understood. So the gift of the trauma that I had to go through was that the people who were helping to carry me through it, because I'm going to be really honest, I needed people to mentally and emotionally carry me through that, and maybe even like force me to eat some days, right? But with that gift, the people who were in my life were literally the perfect, almost like Navy SEAL team of support to get me through the trauma that I had. And with that, what I started to do is say, okay, what is our soul plan? How was this allowed to happen? I felt like he needed to be here for him and me and for his kids, and so it started me on a deeper dive, even as a medium already and someone who connects with angels and life guides, where I started diving deep into my personal soul plan with him and what did that look like. So I did many different modalities. I did biofeedback. I have great friends who are healers. I would have healing sessions. I tried counseling a few times. I felt like I was educating the counselor. It was not a good fit for me. I'm not against that. If it works, do it. It just wasn't a good fit for me. So I started taking journeys in many different ways on this healing, being much more open and wanting to know what was our soul plan. I want to say a couple things about this, and then I'll let you ask me questions. Number one, even with all of the gifts that I have and everything that I know from the beautiful work and calling that I get to experience every day, I had no way to bypass the human grief. It is the human experience. The peace that I have found in the way that he left is in the soul level and in the soul calling. But it was never the human side of that. The other thing that I like to tell people is like, you're meant to be here. You are meant to be here. You're not accidentally here. He wasn't accidentally here. And so it's always about just leaving that sliver of light and opening for something to change in the next 5 minutes, the next minute, the next hour, because there's always this love, support, and guidance from the other side that is wanting to encourage us to leave our legacy and our lessons here in a beautiful way.
Mm. Thank goodness you were able to, it must have been humbling to be on the other side of the aisle, like someone who's always helping others all of a sudden to receive that help. So I'm sure on a soul level that was helpful for you to learn how to take all the support and to be okay with that. And it's kind of like a seesaw where both, you and your peers and your friends, were able to support you and do that on a soul level. And you were able to receive. And that's so important. I always say that camaraderie, that support, people around you is very important. But yeah, it's have you like for people listening, I mean, there's like that book by Harold Kushner called "Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People?" And that's a big question that people have. Like, why do I sign up? Am I some form of like masochist? Do I like pain? Like, what is it about pain that we experience here that pertains to our own soul level? Like, what have you gathered from your own personal and professional studies that could allow people to understand some of the pain that we experience more as it relates to the soul's plan and what we go through as souls?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, we have to imagine where our soul is before we come to this planet. We are in perfection. We are in unconditional, blissful love, right? When we are in that environment, it's challenging to understand what it would feel like to be disconnected or not believe there is a God or feel grief because a loved one passed. All of these different lessons that we want to learn when we come to planet Earth. When you're in that perfection heavenly state, you can't really imagine it. So what our soul does is it will say, okay, in the scope of eternity, 100 years on planet Earth is the blink of an eye. What do I want to learn? What do I want to experience in the contrast of planet Earth that I can't experience here in the perfection realm? And so our souls will make up these ideas, these lessons that we want to learn, these missions. We will connect with other souls that are going to come in and show up as our friend, our mom, our dad, our child, our boss, whatever it is that we need. We are creating a plan so that we have options to learn and our family does too, or the other souls do too. We choose our life guides before we come into planet Earth. We choose our guardian angels. So each person is coming in with a team. Let's talk about somebody who maybe comes in to end an ancestral line of, let's say, alcoholism. Every man in this family for the last 10 generations has been an alcoholic. And this person says, this soul says, okay, I'm going to end that in that generational line so that the future generations have new opportunities. So there's a long lineage of this. And this soul will come in and create, okay, that means this soul is going to have to choose a father who was maybe an alcoholic or abusive. Maybe there are a couple things that go along with that. But what is the role in the plan? The plan is for this soul to end that trauma from continuing and learn the lessons that it can while it's here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing the impact that we could have on the collective team as well as our own nuclear team within our family. by stopping cycles, whether that's domestic violence, alcoholism, whatever, so yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great point that people have the opportunity to really reverse generational patterns. Um,
Absolutely. And that was my understanding when I was in that second NDE is that I realized our souls are here first and foremost for our own growth. So I am truly here. Yes, I get to be a mom and a friend and a daughter and a sister and all of these things that I get to be. But truly, we are here first and foremost for our own soul growth. And in the higher plan, our soul growth is meant to feed into the collective growth of planet Earth and the humanity that is here right now.
yeah, yeah. And it seems like not only you climbed the mountain of this NDE and you saw the beauty of it and all the guides, the angels, but with each one, you're able to come back with something unique and something different, and so that you apply, each day. I mean, for you, within your NDEs, like, what do you feel is the biggest collective lesson? Like, if you were to say, all right, Michelle, like, number one lesson that someone can learn from your experiences, in this life, what would you say are some of the top big things that you learned from climbing that mountain, kind of like Moses and coming down with it?
Yeah. Probably the biggest thing is that none of us are living this life alone. We all have a team of angels, life guides, loved ones in spirit, God, source, the divine, whatever word that you want for that higher power that are cheering us on to accomplish our missions and our lessons. And I think that's really the most important thing because so often in this human form, we feel alone, whether it's sitting at Starbucks drinking your coffee or you go home to no one that night or nobody's called you today, right? So we do it in little ways and in big ways. And the more we can open up to the fact that we truly are souls having this human experience, the more we can realize how connected and loved and honored we are to be here. The other thing that I want to say is this: very often our life guides and angels are learning from us. They're learning how we are when we are navigating challenges here on this planet. They're still learning. They're, oh, I didn't realize that that was going to be an option, that you were going to create this space. Here's the other thing that I would love to say about this that I learned so strongly in these messages from the other side. Our free will, and we have free will in two ways. We have free will as a soul. None of us are forced to be here. Our soul chose to be here.
Mhm.
So even if you say, no, my mom was 14 and accidentally got pregnant with me, it was not an accident. You were meant to be here, right? So we have free will on the soul level. We chose to be here. We also have free will on the human level. What does that mean? That means a couple of things. That means, first and foremost, the free will that we have is our perspective, and that is our superpower. So I can look at the flat tire and say, it ruined my day. I was late to work. Like, there's my free will in action. Or I could look at it and say, well, it probably delayed me from something terrible happening. I missed the car wreck on the freeway or whatever that is. But in that free will, now I have just used my perspective to shift myself into alignment, which is really where we all want to be when we talk body, mind, and spirit alignment. That is really important. The other thing with our human free will, because we have perspective, which is our number one tool with that, is we can be like a dog and chase our tail in a circle for 5 years if we want, whatever that looks like. You can. You have free will. You're allowed to do that here. Is it productive? No. But at some point, you're going to have to choose to quit chasing your tail in that circle and really start to look and see what your other options are that are available to you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you just evoked, um, something that is instrumental in all self-help or psychological interventions, which is, Viktor Frankl's. I don't know if you're familiar with Viktor, but he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, Holocaust Survivor. And someone asked him,
Hmm.
what is freedom? And he just said that stimuli between the space between the stimuli and the response. And here a man was stripped of every possible freedom that you could possibly have, but he found that in those moments. And I love that you're able to really articulate so well that people have that ability to really choose their reality, to choose that. And in a world obsessed with power, I think people should be more focused on finding their own, not control over others. So,
100%. And let's talk about that because if I don't know my own power and I don't know myself and I don't know how to find peace within me, How am I ever going to do that in the world out there? How am I going to radiate peace, love, light, whatever it is that we all want to see happen if I can't find it within myself first and foremost? So, the world peace that we want is possible, but it starts within each of us because of the collective consciousness and the way that our energy ripples out.
Yeah. No, and you certainly embody that. There was like that quote by I think it was Muji said, "Yesterday I was smart. I wanted to change the world. Today I was wise. And I decided to change myself." So the microcosm is a macrocosm. It's in so many ways. Are there days where you just wake up and say, "Wow, this is so hard. I can't do this. I missed it over there." I know a lot of NDE'ers get quite homesick. Um,
Yeah.
when you have those moments, how do you kind of pivot? How do you, because I think a lot of people may feel a sense of homesickness or they're just like, what am I doing? How do you pivot when maybe that moment may arise?
Right, and that is very accurate. There are always those moments when you remember what home feels like, you're like, "Oh, I just can I go there now? It's been a day," right? Or that was a tough conversation or
Yeah.
whatever it is that you had to have.
Mhm.
Here's how I navigate that. So first of all, I don't think I'm getting out of here early. I've kind of tried a few times here I am. So I've agreed and I understand that I'm probably here until my late 90s. And so with that what I would say is that even in the scope of eternity, if you live to be 100, this life is the blink of an eye. So that home and that love and that blissfulness that we came from, we are returning to it. It is not going anywhere, but we've got to make the most of our time while we're here. Because whether or not you believe in reincarnation, this version of Michelle is only going to have this lifetime and walk this planet once. And so I want to do the most with it. And there is a free will choice that I have where I can say, I could go to my room, shut the door, and stay in bed for the next however many decades because my loved one passed by suicide. Or I can choose to get up and re-engage in life and create new experiences and meet new friends and choose to be here now. I promise you as a medium, every one of your loved ones on the other side are cheering you on to engage with life and keep going. The last thing they want is for you to go to bed and shut the door for 30 years. Okay.
Mm,
So, knowing what I know, yes, I miss home regularly, but I also realize that I am my home and that the bigger part of us is still in home. So, when we talk about your soul essence, your higher self, all of these words that we like to use to talk about the soul. Really, there's only like our little pinky tip in our human form right now. The majority of our soul is home. And so, what we can do is we can do meditation to channel that love into us. We can have people that do sound baths. Vibration and frequency will also bring us to that connection. So, there are a lot of ways where we can bring in that harmony. Here's the other thing I want to say about that. Spirit just dropped this in my head, so I'm going to have to throw this out there. Okay. When we are longing for home, this was good. I'm glad you asked. Spirit gave me a good one for this. What are we truly longing for? We are longing for alignment because in that heavenly realm, you cannot be out of alignment. So when I say, "Oh, I want to go home," what Spirit just said to me is like, what am I saying? I'm saying I am longing for that alignment where I can channel that heavenly love and energy into this human form now.
wow. Profound. So, in other words, heaven is not a place that you could go on the Waze app and put as your destination. It's more so a state of consciousness. Is that what you would say? And something that you don't have to die to experience that, people could experience that in the here and now. Is that kind of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. People have out of body experiences and they experience it. People do what ayahuasca journeys, which I've never done, whatever they're doing, right? To experience it. So it is available to us right here, right now. And I love what they just said. Yes, we do long for home. But what does that mean? It means we're longing for alignment in our
Mhm.
human form.
Yeah. Beautiful. And you drop spirit and you drop so many gems. And I guess we're kind of the secretary for the afterlife in a way.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, you highlighted something because I've noticed the epidemic of loneliness or the epidemic of homesickness that people had. And, if people were just to be able to have the information that we are longing and seeking, is all inside of you. It's around you. You don't have to wait for it or strive for it or earn it. You already have that. You just have to take away the blinders and open up, and you have so much around you. So I really thank you for that, because so many people, the information, they feel they're alone and that they're stuck or
Right.
going anywhere. They just want to wait to die to get to some, you know, utopia, whatever. Like, you don't like, so I really thank you for highlighting that. And with that information, that's a big correlation with how we live. I believe that information is very pivotal with our behaviors and the lives which we lead.
Absolutely. I will say this. If we get to that heavenly realm sooner than we're really meant to be, there is going to be a part of us that looks back and says, "Oh, I missed that opportunity. And in my original plan, I had wanted to do that." So, truly, it is about making the most of your time here and finding that peace within. It's always available to us.
Yeah. Lastly, before we get into like, I believe earlier on you mentioned there was some channeled message that might have been, maybe that came away a minute or two ago.
I think it might have.
Sometimes timelines change in these conversations. And when I take a step back from your NDEs, it seems like there was some degree of subjectivity, or there was some differences to them.
Right.
When people cross over on the other side, I guess my question is twofold. Is it how we live in this life? How does that relate to when we cross over in this particular lifetime? And also, is heaven objective or subjective? Is it personal, or is it like a uniformal kind of thing where it's just like everyone's kind of having the same thing?
Right, exactly. I love that question because I always say that. Like, how did I have 3 completely, totally different NDE
Yeah.
experiences? Being raised Catholic, I should have walked to the Golden Gates and St. Peter should have been there every single time. Nope, Michelle, go back, or whatever the answer was, right? So, here is what I have come to find as a medium and also as somebody who's had 3 NDE
Mhm.
experiences. That heavenly realm is truly about love and compassion. So you are going to find what you're looking for. If this version of Michelle is expecting it to be a beach with warm water and beautiful flowers, what will I find? A beach with warm water and flowers. If I need it to be mountains, if I need, right? So heaven, because it's about love and compassion, is always going to greet us in a way that is comfortable for us. If it's somebody who says, I don't believe in aliens, you're not going to be greeted by a blue alien with 2 heads because that's not going to be love and comfort for you. So
Mm.
that side is working. The other thing that I will bring up, because I'm sure you know about people who've had distressing NDEs, I've asked Spirit about that. That is usually a conscious creation where they're like thinking, I'm not worthy, I did something wrong, I've been a bad human. So they're starting to consciously create that. But what I have been told over and over again is that with each one of these beautiful souls, there is a light that is being held by them so that they can always leave that idea or that thought. Some people have said, God's hand came in and reached in and pulled me out of hell. Okay, I'm going to call that the light by you or whatever that is, or people have an awareness. Wait, I can go back and I can be a better person. Okay. So there's always that light that is being held by every soul.
Mm. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. And in a way, you would say there's a degree of magnetism with vibrational frequencies, or just our energy and what we experience that, over there, in a way.
Just
Yeah.
like there is here on planet Earth. We live very much in a vibrational frequency. If you are somebody who is afraid of everything, you're going to attract and see more things to be afraid of. You're going to attract friends that live in fear. You're going to attract, you know what I mean? And so we see the idea of, birds of a feather flock together. Yes, and it tends to be a vibrational match that is actually what's bringing them in. And so very often when I'll have clients come to me and be like, "Is this, how did that man leave me? He was the love of my life." Well, he wasn't a vibrational match for you. The love of your life will be.
Mhm. Yeah. So true. And a top song by Billie Eilish as well too. So yeah. But yeah, sometimes for people who just may be going through a difficult time in their life and going through all these challenges, I think they have
Mhm.
to remember that they could upgrade their own heaven in a way by skillfully and gracefully going through their experiences, and of having that phoenix out of the ashes type sensation and rising above what you're going through, and using pain to feel purpose as you're doing so beautifully in the life that you live. So
Oh, thank
yeah.
you. Yeah, that is always going to be our choice is how do we want to respond to this situation and what story are we telling ourselves about it? We can look at something and tell people it was our biggest failure. I lost the job or I lost the marriage, it was my biggest failure. Or we can tell ourselves a totally different story around that is every bit as empowering and will move us further down our path about that soul contract was over. It was time to me for me to move on so that I could grow into who I'm meant to be now, whether that's the job, the marriage, the friend, whatever it is.
Wow. Man, you are dropping a lot of wisdom from some of the greats. That was a quote by another Holocaust survivor, Elie Wiesel, who said, God created us because God loves stories. The lives that we live are all the accumulations of the stories of God. So it's beautiful. We have always the ability to be the hero of our own story
Mhm.
and write it anew. So yeah. Well, Michelle, you've been able to really offer such, I'd say, hard-earned wisdom and direct experiences that you share and continue to experience. Um, is there anything that's calling to you, to really evoke? Because I feel you could drop that. Well, I don't know if that mic drops in front of you, but you certainly can. You've done more than you've shared so much. And I encourage my viewers to really listen to this conversation a bunch of times because Michelle really drops so many beautiful droplets of wisdom for all of us in these times. But is there anything that has been coming to you lately, for people to hear just at this time where you feel like, "Hey, Jacob, we're good. I need to climb the ladder. I had an NDE with that, so we're good."
Yeah,
Fitting that
exactly.
you're on the wisdom of Jacob's ladder here. Yeah.
Perfect, right? Not an accident, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. No coincidences.
Here's what I'm really feeling called to say by spirit, right? Peace is available to all of us, like we talked about earlier, by finding what gets us in alignment. Maybe it is going out for a run. Maybe it's sitting quietly in a meditation. Maybe it's going to church to pray or to temple to pray or on and on like that, right? So, number one, right now we are in a time on this planet. This is why I'll start talking fast because I'm channeling this. And when I channel, it goes fast. But we are at a time on this planet where your inner peace is of the utmost importance, no matter who you are. So, the challenge for each of us right now, each human on this planet, is to find the way to find your peace so that we can bring that ripple effect up and actually have the peace that we're longing for in our life.
Mm. We all have a piece of peace, right? And
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Michelle, thank you for that message. For viewers who want to get in touch with you, and I'm sure that we'll drop this all over the show notes, but where's the best way for people to find you? Are you on Instagram, Facebook, you know,
I
website?
am.
Okay.
Instagram and Facebook, and you can find me on my website, Michelle Clare, CLARE.net.
Yeah. And we know there's no endings, but anything cool around the bend on this road? Any cool events coming up or ideas that are brewing with Michelle or um,
Yeah, well, I'm starting to teach courses. So I will be teaching a Connect with Your Life Guides course the second half of April, which this is part of what I love. I want to empower people to do it for themselves because we all have that connection to source. I just got done teaching an angel course. I'll be teaching a soul plan course so we can start diving into what does our soul plan look like for us. But I always want people to realize they are connected to source. You are connected to your loved ones. Mediums might help you hear the answer, or channels might, but they hear you talking. You do not need a medium to tell your loved one that you love them and you miss them.
love it, love it. And right at the anniversary time of when your NDEs, right in April, I believe it was April,
Hmm.
November, and May.
End of
If I'm
April.
not mistaken, yeah, yeah, right around my birthday time too. So it's the end of the winter. It's Aries season. It's a new life begins. So love what you're doing, and I strongly encourage viewers to check out Michelle's website as well as give her a follow on Instagram. Check her out on Facebook. She has some great content always brewing. Michelle Clare, thank you so much for coming on. You're welcome back at any point in time, and I know I feel so blessed to have you here.
No.
As a guest, really learned a lot from what you had to say today.
Oh, thank you so much, Jacob. It has really been an honor and a pleasure to connect with you.
Well, that was a real high vibratory interview. I know so many of us really were able to ascend our awareness through listening to Michelle and her channeled information, as well as her lessons and narratives from a near death experience and all that she's been able to gain and accumulate throughout the years. So, thank you all for tuning in to our conversation with Michelle Clare, and we'll see you here next time on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Let's continue to ascend higher and higher to new heights. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you here next time on the channel.